Okay, so let's get things started. Welcome to the special class meeting of Anthropology C125A, East Asian Languages and Cultures C175, Archaeology of East Asia. I'm Junko Habu, the instructor of this class, an anthropological archaeologist, professor of the Department of Anthropology, and the chair of the Center for Japanese Studies. Although this is an archaeology class in the Department of Anthropology, the most important focus of this class is critical thinking, the core component of anthropological studies. And I hope that by now you guys got the sense that we've been talking about the importance of critical thinking, question the common sense, and really to think about what it really means when we study different types of materials. And in this class, we have been discussing continuity and change in landscape practice in different parts of East Asia, the importance of historical and local memories in people's identity, nationalism, colonialism, and archaeology and anthropology, and the intersection of archaeology, ethnography, and agroecology. Today, I'm really honored to introduce a special guest for this class, Ms. Miri, the internationally acclaimed novelist, playwright, and essayist, and her son, Mr. YANAGI Takeharu, an entomologist and ecologist at the Tokyo University of Agriculture. He is also a collaborator of Ms. Yu for her theatrical works. I'm also pleased to have our colleagues and graduate students from East Asian Languages and Cultures, Comparative Literature, and the English department. I'm especially thankful for Professor Miriam Saas for coming to join us with her graduate seminar students. And I'm hoping that we can have an interesting discussion in an interdisciplinary manner. So Ms. Yu, as you guys all know, is visiting our campus this week as a recipient of the 5th Berkeley Japan Prize for her genre-defying work as an author. And tomorrow we will have a big event at the Brower Center at 5 p.m. And I hope many of you can join us. Let me give a brief overview of Ms. Yu's work. Ms. Yu, as a citizen of South Korea, was born in Tsuchiura, Ibaraki, Japan in 1968, and grew up in Yokohama. Her 1996 novel, Family Cinema, received the Akutagawa Prize, Japan's most prestigious literary award, in 1997, and the English version of the Tokyo Ueno Station, translated by Morgan Giles, won the 2020 National Book Award for Translated Literature in the United States. And in the last Tuesday's class, we reviewed some of her works, and I hope that all of you have read at least part of the book of Tokyo Ueno Station, and I'm expecting lots of questions from you guys. Her 2004 novel, End of August, whose protagonist was modeled after her marathon runner grandfather, vividly describes the injustice, indignity, and hardships that he, his family, and many other Korean people had to suffer during and after the Japanese occupation of Korea. The works of Miri have brought critical attention to the challenges of socioeconomic inequality, ethnic discrimination, gender discrimination, and everyday practices that continue to shape the life of marginalized and traumatized individuals. As we discussed in the class on Tuesday, Tokyo Ueno Station was conceived as a link between the pain of homeless people in Tokyo Ueno Park, whose families disintegrated after walking away from home, so-called dekasegi, and the pain experienced by evacuees after the Great East Japan earthquake and the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant accident of March 11, 2011. She currently lives in Odaka, Minami-soma city in Fukushima, where she runs a bookstore and cafe called Full House. And that is coming from a title of one of her early works. This past summer, I had an opportunity to visit Ms. Miri, her partner Murakami-san, and Takeharu-san over there in Odaka, Minami-soma city, and had an opportunity to see the town and neighboring agricultural and forest landscapes. In our discussion, we were pleasantly surprised to realize that Ms. Miri's work as an author often starts with listening to the voices of and collaborating with local residents and other people who have ties to the city of Minami-soma and Fukushima. And they include individuals who are suffering from traumatic experiences, including their memories of the Great East Japan earthquake and loss of their families and friends. Her vivid descriptions of local landscapes to convey the atmosphere of everyday life, and her interest in all living things, such as insects and cats and dogs, in the broader context of local landscapes, have a lot of overlap with what ecologists do, and I think that's where Takeharu-san's work and agroecologist work that we've been discussing in the class really overlap with each other. And her emphasis on historical background and traditional knowledge of local people and a non-linear view of time and space, with an emphasis on the importance of memories, have much in common with archaeological discussions of the long-term resilience of human environmental interactions. And it's very important when we think about what we can do to think about the future. So today, we are delighted to hear Ms. Miri's talk with a focus on her experiences of moving to Odaka in Minami-soma city, Fukushima, her experiences of talking and listening to local residents, weaving stories and working with community members as part of the community. So in the class, we talked the importance of shifting from just doing our research for the sake of academic research to collaborate with local residents and stakeholders, and then move on really to take part of what will happen in discussion and in collaboration with local people. In her case, she moved to Odaka, so now she is part of the community member, and she is a stakeholder. And she did so with her son, Takeharu-san. And so Yu-san's talk will be about 20 minutes with interpretation. Beth Carey kindly agreed to do the difficult task of translation. This afternoon, we are madly preparing for the preparation, and I think I'm very excited to hear that part. And then we will have a short presentation by Mr. YANAGI Takeharu on the ecology of Minami-soma. A question and an answer session will be held after these presentations. So please welcome Ms. Miri.
はじめまして、ユーミリです。私は羽生先生のように講義を一方的にというか準備したお話をして、それで なんて言うんでしょう、皆さんの質問に答えるという形式が苦手で、いつも基本的には、講演はしないというふうに決めていて、そうではない時は、言葉のやり取りをできる形で、お話をしているんですけれども、今回、何からお話をし始めようと考えた時に、なぜそもそも、福島県の南相馬市に住むことになったのかというきっかけからお話ししたいと思います。
Pleased to meet you. I'm Miri. I'm not very comfortable giving a lecture, as Professor Habu is well acquainted with, and then having an answer, question and answer session. So I usually refuse any requests to give lectures. I'd rather have an exchange of words with the people I encounter. So I thought about what I could start talking about today, and I thought, well, why don't I start with the reason why I moved to Minami-soma in Fukushima Prefecture, and what was the catalyst for me doing that.
先ほど8月の果てという作品を羽生さんが、ご紹介くださって、来年英訳がされたものが出版されるんですけども、私の母方の祖父母をモデルにした長編小説です。で、その小説とも関係あるんですけども、私の母が、朝鮮戦争時5歳だったんです。で、5歳の時に、日本に、難民として小さな漁船に乗って、日本海、海を渡り、密入国しました。
Professor Habu mentioned the book End of August, and that is being translated and will be published in English shortly. It is a story of my maternal grandfather and grandmother, who they were the ones who came to Japan as refugees during the Korean War. That was when my mother was just 5 years old. So they were on a small fishing boat, and they crossed the ocean, the Japan Sea, and then came to Japan and were basically illegal immigrants into Japan.
で、私の祖父が朝鮮戦争の時に、慶尚南道のミリアンという町で生まれ育ったんですけども、そのマラソンランナーだった祖父が共産主義者の嫌疑をかけられて、投獄をされて、で、獄中から逃げて単身祖父だけ最初に日本に密入国したのです。
So my grandfather, during the Korean War, すみません、町の名前？
ミリアンという。
ミリアン、a town named Milian, and he was a marathon runner, and he decided that he did not want to participate in the war, and he alone went to Japan initially.
というのが脱獄したというのが、祖父の弟もまたマラソンランナーだったんですけれども、プサンの、校庭を走っている最中に、撃たれて、警察に連行されて行方不明になったという、それでそのまま多分殺害されたというか、ということが家族内にあったので、祖父がその命の危険を感じて、単身日本に、逃れたのです。
My grandfather's younger brother was also a marathon runner, and when he was running in Busan, he was caught by the police, and then basically he was a disappeared person. He just disappeared, and we think that is likely that he was killed by the authorities and by the police. And so my grandfather felt a real danger to his life, and that's why he went to Japan as a refugee.
祖父の弟はそのプサンの大学で、学生運動のリーダー的な存在で、だったのです。皆さんと同じぐらいの年、23歳で、行方不明のまま、亡くなりました。
So the younger brother of my grandfather was, as a student in Busan, he was a leader in the student movement there. Basically, he was about your age. He was 23 years old when he was taken and likely killed.
そして祖父が、脱獄して日本に逃れて、で祖父を探すという目的と、あともう一つはそのミリアンという町が、その南北というか、左派と右派というか、で殺害し合うというか密告し合うという状態になって、母たちも、危険を感じたので、祖母と、母たち4人の小さな子供がプサンから、小さな漁船に乗って、日本に渡りました。
And just as my grandfather found that it was so dangerous to be living in a country that has divisions between North and South, between leftist and rightist, and they're willing to kill each other for being on different sides. He had come to Japan, but my mother's family also. So that was my mother, and the family came. My mother was one of the 4 children in that family that then came to Japan, following him.
祖母は小さな子供たちを抱えて、日本のあちこちで祖父を訪ね歩いたんです。どこにいるだろう。
So they didn't know where my grandfather was because he had already come to Japan, gone to Japan. And so my grandmother and family wandered various places around Japan looking for my grandfather.
そして見つけたのが福島県の南会津郡の只見町というところです。
And they found him in Fukushima Prefecture, Minami-soma gun in Tadamimachi, one of the towns there.
地図を持ってくればよかったなと今後悔してるんですけれども。
I regret that I didn't bring a map to show you.
福島県は、原発がある浜通り、海に面しているところが浜通りで、福島市や郡山市の都市部が中通り、そして、新潟との県境山側が、会津という会津地方という3つに分かれています。
Fukushima is divided into 3 sections. Where the nuclear plant is, right along the coastline, is called Hamadori. And the large cities of Fukushima and Koriyama are in the midsection, the Nakadori area. And then the mountainous area to the most west is called Aizu.
その会津の、最も奥会津というか、新潟との県境に接しているのが只見なんですね。
And farthest away from the coast, in the mountains, closest to Niigata Prefecture, which actually faces toward the Japan Sea, is the Tadami town where he was.
で只見は、ダムの町です。
It's a dam town, a town with a dam.
奥只見ダム、只見ダム、田子倉ダムという3つの大きなダムがあります。で、3つとも発電のためのダムです。
So there are three large dams, Oku Tadami Dam, and Tahokura Dam. And these three dams are used for electricity generation, hydro generation.
日本の高度経済成長期の、都市部の電力を賄うために、作られた、ダムです。
And these were built during the period of Japan's high economic growth to then send electricity to cities.
ですから福島県はその会津地方が、ダムで、首都圏に、送電していた、送電している、今でもしている。そして、その浜通りは、原発があって、原発で、発電した電気は、地元では使っていなかったんですね。東京電力福島第一原子力発電所という名前の通り、東京首都圏のための電気ですから、こう端と端、山側と海側、端と端で、言ってみれば、電力植民地のような、状態だったわけです。
So the Aizu area, those dams with hydro electricity were sent to Tokyo. And also in Hamadori, where the nuclear power plants were, that electricity too wasn't used locally. It was electricity to be sent to Tokyo, just as the official name of the nuclear power plants is Tokyo Electric Power Company, Fukushima Daiichi Nuclear Power Plant. So it was definitely to be sent to the main population area in the Tokyo area.
で、祖父がなぜ、祖父が上陸したのは九州で、なぜ、その韓国人のコミュニティがある関西を通り過ぎ、東京、横浜、川崎などのコミュニティも通り過ぎて福島県の只見町に行ったのかというのは、結局本人が私の子供の頃に亡くなってしまっているので聞けなかったんですけども、福島県只見町で見つかったんです。その時に、見つかったのはかなり時間が経っていて、母が、中学生の時、中学に入るぐらいのタイミングでした。
So it's a little bit of a mystery as to why my grandfather passed by. He landed in Japan in Kyushu and then didn't stay in Western Japan where there are lots of Koreans who live there, and he passed by even Tokyo and Yokohama area where there are also many Koreans, and he went all the way up to Fukushima. As he has already passed away, I really don't know why that was the case. But by the time my mother and grandmother found him, my mother was just about to start middle school. So it was several years after they had arrived in Japan.
おそらく祖父が只見に向かって住み着いたのはちょうどダム建設が行われている時で、大量の労務者がいたんですね。ダムの建設に従事をする。その関係で、只見にいたのではないかと私は思っています。
My assumption is that my grandfather ended up living in Tadami in Fukushima Prefecture because he went to, as part of the number of workers that were needed for the dam construction, because they needed a whole lot, many workers for that.
で、母が中学高校時代を過ごした頃というのは、ちょうどそのダムの建設の、が進み始めていた時で、住民のそのダムのに沈む地域の人との、反対運動、抵抗運動であったり、あと保障の問題で、その条件を交渉したりしている時期だったんです。そういう時期に母はそのダムの湖畔で青春時代を過ごした。
So my mother spent her junior high and high school years at the time of the dam construction. And by the time she was there, there was, of course, opposition movement to the dams of people who lived in villages that were going to be flooded for the dam. And then also there were various lawsuits that were in process during that time. So there was a lot of struggle between the local people and the workers there as well.
私は母が中高校時代の同窓会があるたびに子供時代に只見に行っていたんです。
Whenever my mother's cohorts had an alumni meeting, I always went with her to Tadami to participate.
ですごく忘れられない光景というか母の言葉があるんですけども、その必ず只見に母の日本の故郷でもあるわけですね。で只見に行くとその田子倉ダムという一番大きなダムの湖畔に私たちを連れて行って、ダムの沈んだその私たちには水しかその湖面しか見えないんですけども、母が指をさして、あそこには小学校があった、あそこには墓地があった、あそこには友達の家があった、そして、真ん中に小高い丘があって川が流れていて桜の木があった、お寺があったという見えない湖面を指さして沈んだものをこう母が語ってくれた。
So what I can't forget is my mother's words when she took me to Tadami town, which was her Japanese hometown, and took us to the Tadokura Dam, and she would point to the water surface. All we saw was the water surface, but she would point and say, that's where the elementary school was, and that's where the cemetery was. My friend's house was there, and there was a river there and with cherry blossoms that bloomed in the spring there. So all that kind of image she had in her mind while pointing just on the surface of the water.
あまり近づきすぎてはいけない。あまり見つめすぎてはいけない。なぜなら悲しみに引っ張られてしまうからというふうに母は私に語りました。
And my mother would tell me, don't get too close, don't look too much, because you'll be sucked in by sadness.
母の中ではおそらくその生まれ育った、韓国のミリアンという町を戦争によって離れざるを得なかった、自分と家族の痛苦、痛み苦しみとそのダムの底に沈んだ、家々、そこに暮らしていた友達やその家族の苦しみが重なったのだと思います。
I think her sadness at having had to leave her Korean hometown, Miryam, and come to Japan during the Korean War, and then the pain and sorrow that the people who lived in that location in Tadami faced also, they kind of overlapped for her.
そして、私が 2011年の3月11日の東日本大震災と翌日から続けて起きた原発事故を知ったときに、そして原発から半径20キロ圏内が、警戒区域として立ち入り禁止になるというふうなニュースを当時暮らしていた神奈川県鎌倉市で、見たときに、テレビで見たときに、私の中では母が指をさした固定の田子倉集落と重なったんです。
And when I saw on television at my house in Kamakura City the news about the Great East Japan earthquake of March 11th, 2011, and the next day's nuclear explosion disaster at the nuclear power plant, what overlaid in my mind was my mother's pointing to the surface of the dam as the place that was no longer.
そして母と母の家族が、身一つで逃げざるを得なかった、戦争によって、離れた故郷の、町、ミリアンの町、家も重なりました。
And what also overlaid that was the town in Korea, Miriam, that my mother and family had to escape without carrying anything with them during the Korean War.
私が初めて、浜通りを訪れたのは2011年4月21日です。
When I first visited Hamadori near the coastline in Fukushima, it was April 21st, 2011.
それは、鎌倉の自宅で、当時の官房長官の、枝野官房長官が、原発から20キロ圏内を警戒区域に指定します。4月22日の午前0時からということを聞いたんですね。それは前日の午前中に発表されました。
I heard on the news that Cabinet Secretary Edano announcing that the following day from midnight or 0 hour of April 22nd, the 20-kilometer area around the nuclear power plant would be a restricted zone.
そして私はそのニュースを聞いた、テレビで見たときに、とにかく行ってみようと思ったんです。というのはそのダムの底に沈んだ田子倉集落というのはもう行ってみて歩くことはできないけれども、原発の20キロ圏内の町というのは閉ざされる前だったらこう歩いて見てみる、歩いて自分の目で見て、見ることができるので、とにかく行こうと思って、鎌倉から、車で、Minamisoma の20キロ圏内を目指したのが最初です。
So when I heard this news on the television, I said, why don't I just go there? I can't see the dam, the villages of that were sunk when the dam was made. But right now, if I go, I can see what's happened in the 20-kilometer area right near the nuclear power plant. So I got into the car and drove toward that area.
でその時の様子でもう検問所ができていて、私は嘘をついたんです。おじさんの、 おじさんが浪江町の請戸という場所に住んでいて、犬を置いて出たので犬を探しに来ましたというふうに嘘をついて検問の中に入ったんですけれども、入ってみてその嘘をついたことを、深く後悔しました。
So they had set up checkpoints, and so I actually lied. I said I had an uncle who lived in Namie town and who had left a dog there, and so I was going in to search for the dog. And as soon as I got inside that 20-kilometer area, I deeply regretted having made that lie.
なぜならば、もう鎌倉から向かったので夕暮れ時だったんですけども、車のライトが光る。そのライトで、皆さん、何日も帰らないとわからない、知らないで避難したので、犬や猫を置いて行ったんですね。で、1ヶ月生き延びた犬や猫が車のライトで飼い主が帰ってきたと思って集まってきたんです。で、私はどうすることもできない、かなりの頭数だったので、どうすることもできないという状況で、その自分が犬を探しに来たという言葉を検問所で言ってしまったということで、心が痛くなりました。
So since I had driven up from Kamakura, it was already dusk when I got there. And the headlights, as it got darker, the headlights of my car would pick up the cats and dogs that were left behind. They had been left behind already for a month now, since the initial accident. And they would gather thinking that their owners had come back. And it really pained me to see that these animals, these pets, had been hoping that their owners would come back. And I regretted having given that lie to the checkpoint.
でも実はその日から、訪れた日から始まるノンフィクション作品を、原稿用紙1枚400字詰めで600枚すでに書いているんですけれども、発表できずにいます。
So I've actually written a nonfiction piece that is up to 600 pages with 400 characters per page, but I haven't been able to actually publish it. I don't feel up to publishing it.
その代わりにというか、発表したのが JR 上野駅公園口なのです。
And instead of that, what I did publish was the Tokyo Ueno Station book.
それで、その日から、原発周辺地域と私が接点を持って関わりを始めたんですけれども、鎌倉から何度も通っているうちに、Minamisomaの臨時災害放送局から、のディレクターの今野さんという方から、Minamisomaに通っているなら臨時災害放送局に出てもらえないかというふうな、依頼があったのです。
So that was the start of my connection with the nuclear disaster area. And as I kept going up there to visit, I was asked by the person running the emergency disaster radio station, a very local radio station in the city of Minami-soma, if I could do something for them.
で、臨時災害放送局というのは、言葉の通りなんですけども、地域にあるコミュニティ FM ラジオ放送局とは異なって、大きな災害が起きたときに臨時に立ち上がるラジオ放送局なんです。
This is actually an emergency radio station that they set up when there's a major disaster in an area. It's not the local FM station that always is established, but they establish it for disaster related information.
主には大きなラジオ放送やテレビでは放送されないここでミネラルウォーターが配布されてますとか、ここで自衛隊のお風呂が仮設入浴施設が今何時から何時まで開設されてますというような情報を流すことが主目的です。
The main purpose is to give information to the people who are suffering in the disaster area, such as they'll be giving out mineral water at this location, or the self-defense forces have set up a temporary bath and these are the hours that you can use the bath. That kind of information is what this sort of radio station offers.
通常ですと、台風や、大規模な火災や、地震が収束するというか、避難所に皆さん、移転して、生活が落ち着く頃に閉局するんです。平均2ヶ月ぐらいで閉局しています。
So when this kind of radio station is set up after a typhoon or fire, a major fire or earthquake, it's set up until things get resolved, until people are sort of back onto a fairly normal footing. And usually it's about 2 months that this sort of station is up and running.
けれども、東日本大震災は被害の規模が大きかったのと、福島の場合は地震、津波、原発事故の避難生活が長く続いたので、結局2018年の3月25日まで、開いてました。ですから私が、そのラジオ臨時災害放送局に関わったのは2012年の2月から閉局まで2018年の3月25日までです。そこで、2人と1人という番組を担当していました。
So, but the Great Japan, East Japan earthquake was so large and there were the earthquake, the tsunami, and the nuclear disaster. So this radio station was operational for a long time until March 25th, 2018. And I was involved from the early stage until 2018 from すみません、2012年からね。
2012年の2月、はい、2月から。
From February of 2012, a year or so after the initial disaster. And I was part of the program called Two People and One Person.
ここからやっと本題に入るというか、
前段
なぜ私がMinamisomaに関わることになったのかというのが長い祖父母から母に、からこうつながる今物語をお話ししましたが、ここからが2人と1人という聞くという仕事をしたという話になります。
Okay. So that was a long introduction from my grandparents to my mother to me as to why I ended up going to Minami-soma. But now I'd like to get into the main part, which is listening is what I was doing.
毎週金曜日8時半から9時まで放送されました。それはローカルエリアなので、Minamisoma、市内限定、隣の市、相馬市までは聞けたのではないかなというふうに、思います。ドアが 開け閉め、それでですね、2人と1人というタイトルを私から提案したんです。というのは2人というのが、地元の住民の方、1人というのが私です。
So every week on Friday from 8:30 to 9 p.m., the station ran this program, and it reached only Minami-soma and maybe part of actual Soma city too, but it was a very local audience for that radio program. And two people and one person, the title of the program. The two people were local residents, and one person was me, and I would have that program that way.
その2人というのが重要で、まず1人にラジオにハブさんにラジオに出ていただけませんか、もう1人連れてきてくださいというふうに依頼をすると、必ず一番というかかなり親しい人を連れてくるんです。その親友である、家族である、会社の同僚である、あと、先生と教師だった時もあります。そうすると、まず初対面で1対1だと緊張するけれども、隣に親しい人がいると、私とこう話をするのがなかなかできなくても、隣でこうだったよね、あの日どうだったっけっていうふうに、こういう話になるわけですね。親しい人との話になる。そうすると、一つには私と話すと、私は関東で育ったので、標準語です。けれどもその2人で話すと方言で話されるんですね。で、方言を紹介できるというのがあります。あともう一つは、お二人が最初に出会った時はいつですかというふうに話すと、震災前の時間ですね。東日本大震災の前の南相馬の街の様子や、その個人史、歴史を聞くことができるわけです。というので2人にしました。あとその2人と1人というか、私は当事者ではないので、東日本大震災の時関東にいたので3人にはなり得ないと思うんですね。その2人と1人、そのとの距離が重要であるというふうに思って2人と1人というタイトルにしました。
So what I would do would be to ask somebody I met or heard about to come onto the radio program, and then ask them to bring somebody along with them to the program. And they usually chose a friend or family or work colleague or their teacher, somebody who is close to them. So if you have a one-to-one conversation, it can be kind of strained and tension-filled. But if there were two of them, then they could talk to each other and confirm with each other how they felt about certain things. And then also their talking to me would be in standard Japanese because I'm not from that local area, whereas they talk to each other in the local dialect, and we could also introduce the local dialect on the radio show as well. And they would start, I would start asking them how the two of them met, and they would give me a rendition of what their history was with each other. And so I would get a sense of what Minami-soma was like in pre-disaster times as part of their personal or individual history. And I'm also not one of the people that was affected directly by the disasters. So to me, it was important to have it as two people and one person. And that "and" was a way to keep the distance and talk to them about their experiences.
アーカイブが上がっていると思うので、多分皆さんも聞けると思います。私はほとんど喋ってないんですね、その番組で。聞き手に徹していて、質問がお二人が出会ったのは、いつですかという質問と、あとその30分番組の中で、どこかで2011年3月11日はどこで何をしていらっしゃいましたかという質問をします。はい。
Those programs have been archived, so if you're really interested, I'm sure you could search them out and listen to them. Actually, I don't talk much in the programs, other than the initial question of where did you meet? And then at some point in the 30 minutes, there'll be a question of what were you doing and where were you on the day of the disaster on March 11th, 2011.
台本はないです。私はラジオに何度か、本を出版する時や演劇をやる時にそのプロモーションも兼ねて出ることがあるんですけども、そうするとかなり台本がしっかりしている、です。質問も書いてあるし、答えも大体これくらいの分量でってあるんですけども、今回のように全く何も用意してないで収録をしました。
So I sometimes appear on the radio or other media to promote my books or things that I'm doing. And usually there's a script that's worked up, and maybe some of the questions and even some of the answers have already been written down so I know where the conversation is going. But like today, for this radio program, I didn't write a script. I didn't have any preconceived notions as I was listening to those people.
というのが、その2012年の、収録始めたの2月ぐらいなのですが、その被災地の住民の方々は取材をされるということに傷ついていたんです。
By February of 2012, almost a year after the disaster, the people who lived in that area had become hurt by the kinds of interview requests and research that other people were doing on them.
テレビ、ラジオ、新聞、週刊誌、大量の取材者が被災地に押し寄せて、取材をしていったんです。取材って、言葉自体結構暴力的な言葉で、取材の取は取るという感じですね。で、材は材料なんですね。材料を取るということなんです。
So television, radio, newspapers, weekly magazines had sent many reporters to that area to do their material gathering. And in Japanese, the word for that is shuzai, and the word shu means to take, and zai means material. So it's really a matter of going there and taking the material from these people who suffered the disasters.
それがですね、欲しい材料というのがより悲惨な話、少し時間が経ってからはその悲惨さ、絶望の中から、立ち上がる人の感動的な話、その2つが主に求められました。
So what they were seeking with these interviews was the most tragic example of people who had been affected by the disasters. And then a little while later, it would be how people had really worked hard to overcome the despair and the kind of happier or good feeling of having overcome that despair.
例えば仮設住宅に住んで津波で家が流された方の家をこう訪ねて、あるテレビ局なんですけれども、家がイノシシや、原発の避難区域でイノシシやハクビシンやアライグマやネズミにかなり入られたお宅というのがあるんですね。ガラスが割ってしまって、ガラスを割ったのは泥棒なんです実は。その避難区域の中で泥棒が横行して、ガラスを割って入って、そこに獣が入ってしまって家財が糞尿で汚れた、そういう絵を求められていて、津波で流された人にそういう家じゃないですかっていうふうに聞かれたりする、求めてる絵、求めてる話というのがもう決まっている場合が多かったんですね。なので、私は、ただ聞く、ただ話を聞くということならば、どうしても取材というと聞きたいことを、聞きたいように、聞き出してしまうことによって、その、非取材者の、記憶を、や思いをねじ曲げてしまったり傷つけてしまったりということがあるので、そういうことはしたくない。とにかくただ聞くという番組を、やろうというふうに思ったんです。
So, for example, if a television station goes to somebody in temporary housing to do some research, and then they want the footage of what their previous house was like. And sometimes there were quite a few burglars who were in that area who broke the glass of houses, and then the wild boars, raccoons, mice, rats would enter the house. And then it would become just really all strewn with feces, and all their items were just all over the floor. That kind of really sad situation would be something that a television crew would like to film. And so they would have, they sought the answers to their preconceived notion of what a disaster area should look like, or what people who had suffered disasters should feel. But I wanted to just listen to their stories. Those types of research for various media stories, they just pull out what they want. And the subject could feel like what they had said was very distorted, or they were hurt by the stories that were shown of their situation. So I wanted to really avoid that and just listen to their stories.
それでですね、最初はその30分番組なんですけども、特に2012年は話し出すと止まらない方が多かったです。
So the actual radio program is just 30 minutes, but especially in the early days in 2012, when they started talking, they just couldn't stop.
例えば2時間話し続ける、その避難の時の苦難を2時間話し続ける方や、あとその時、話した後にお手紙をいただいて、あの時はマイクが立ってたから話せなかったけれども、ゆうさん、一日時間をくれないか。で、避難区域になった町を案内しながら、津波で、流された自分の家の跡地を見てほしいというおっしゃる方がいて、それは一日、その方の車に乗って、付き合ったりしたこともありました。
There would be times when people would talk for 2 hours how they dealt with the disaster situations. And I also got letters afterwards. And one of the letters, for example, said that there was a mic in front of us, so I didn't want to say this during our session. But if you could give me a day, I would like to take you to where my house was and the area where I lived and talk to you about that. So I went and spent a day with the person and heard his story.
その時の話というのはIC レコーダーも回していないですし、メモも取っていないですし、ただ聞いたということなんですけども、その地元の住民同士では2011年3月11日のことは話さないですね。皆さん筆舌に尽くしがたいというのは英語で何て訳すのでしょうか。筆と舌とにしがたいということなので、書き言葉でも喋り言葉でも多分表せないということを筆舌にしがたいというふうに日本語で言うんですけれども。
So actually, the people in that area don't talk to each other about March 13th. I'm sorry, March 11th, 2011. In Japanese, there's a phrase, but it means that you can't write or say anything about that time. It's that difficult a situation that people faced.
それで、話さない、地元の人同士では話さない、で取材者には話さない、けれどもユウさんにじゃあ一日付き合ってくださいというふうに言って私が聞いて、背中にこうべったり張り付いていたコールタールが軽くなった気がする。コールタールのようなものをずっと背負ってるような気がして、それが聞いてもらうことによって剥がれた気がするっておっしゃった方もいました。
So the people there didn't talk to each other about the disaster, and they didn't want to talk formally to somebody with a mic or a recording about the disaster. But when they were able to talk to me without I wasn't taking any memos, I wasn't recording anything, then some of them told me that it's as if a big, heavy coal tar that was on my back, on my shoulders, had been lifted, that my feeling got lightened up.
この調子でこうずっと話しているとすごく時間が経って、経ってしまって、しかも皆さんからの質問というかやっぱやり取りをすることが一番重要だと思うので、私の聞く仕事についての話は、この辺で、やめて、
So I could go on and on, but one of the purposes today, important things, is to have an exchange with you to answer some of your questions. So I'll stop now, and maybe we can get to the questions. But before that, we have Takeharu-san's talk.
Yes. So that was an amazing talk, and I'm sure you have many questions. But before we move on to the Q&A session, I would like to ask Yanagi Takeharu-san to give his short presentation about the ecology of Minami-soma.
Thanks for introduction, Hab-sensei. My name is Takeharu Yanagi, and I'm studying entomology and ecology at Tokyo University of Agriculture. I'm talking about ecology of Minamisoma. I specialize in the taxonomy of subterra diving beetle that living in groundwater, but I'm also actively engaged in research on ecology of after the Tohoku earthquake. My English is not well, so I'm not confident in conveying nuances. So this time I rely on the interpreter to speak in Japanese, please. それでは、短くですね、南相馬の生態学、特に地震後のさまざまな問題について紹介をさせていただきたいと思います。
So I would like to talk about the ecology of Minami-soma and then the various problems that have arisen since the earthquake disaster.
このスライドの背景は現在の南相馬市の沿岸部になります。
This is the coast area of Minami-soma currently.
ソーラー発電所と大きな堤防が海沿いにあるのがわかると思います。
You can see that there's solar panels for producing electricity and also a major levee at the edge of the water.
すごく先進的な光景に見えますけど、これが完成するにはたくさんの生き物の犠牲がありました。
So in order to construct this, there's a lot of impact on many different living creatures.
これらの問題について少しお話しさせていただきた
So
い
I'd
と思
like
い
to
ます。
talk about that.
Next. まずはこちらをご覧ください。これ、青い花と緑色の風景が、お水ですね。それが見えると思いますけれども。
You can see the water and there's some blue flowers here.
普通このような光景は湿原とかがあるような自然公園にあると思うんですよね。
So probably normally you would see this in like a wetlands area or within a natural park.
しかしこの写真では家のすぐ近くにあるのがわかると思います。
You can see that this is very close to where the houses are built.
Next, please. この花は水葵という花なんですね。
This flower is called mizu aoi.
本来は自然豊かな湿原に生えている植物です。
And it's water blue is the name of the flower if you direct translate it. Normally it would be in a wetlands area.
日本の絶滅危惧種に指定されています。
And it is in an endangered species in Japan.
先ほどは青い花が一面に広がっていましたが、これは過去の風景になってしまいました。
And this has become a past landscape, that area that I showed where this flower is.
Yes. これはですね、この右側の写真をご覧いただけると分かるんですけれども、
If you look at the picture on the right,
大きな堤防の下に追いやられていますよね。
and they're just below a big levee that's been built, a concrete levee.
これがすごく完全に工事が完成すると左のようにブルトーザーの後でもう潰されてしまっています。
And then when this levee was completed, as you can see on the left side, the bulldozers have destroyed all the greenery.
Next, please. その次もお願いします。これ工事の様子なんですが、もうとても大規模に工事をしているのがわかると思います。
And you can see that it's a major scale, a large scale construction project.
この水葵という花以外にもたくさんの甲虫ですね、タイガービートルとかビーチリーフカッティングビーとかたくさんの希少な昆虫が生息していました。
There were also many insects living in that area, like the tiger beetle and the beech leaf cutting bee.
次お願いします。これが今ご紹介したタイガービートル、日本語で瓦半苗と言いますけれども、
Here's the tiger beetle.
巣穴の深さが30センチぐらいしかないんですね。
And it lives about 30 centimeters below the surface.
そうするとブルトーザーが入ると簡単にクラッシュされてしまいます。
So when a bulldozer enters this area, it's just wiped away.
次お願いします。これは餌を食べながら交尾をしている様子ですけれども。
So this is the mating while they're eating.
次お願いします。 これが先ほどあれしたビーチリーフカッティングビー、絹毛ハキリバチと言います。
This is the beach leaf cutting bee.
これもですね、砂浜にしか生きられなくて、堤防になってしまうと彼らは死んでしまいます。
They can only live in a beach area, and when it becomes a concrete levee, then they have no place to live anymore.
次お願いします。昆虫だけではありません。
It's not just insects.
これは小鳥、コアジサシという小鳥なんですが、
This is a small bird that lives there
これも砂浜にしか生息できません。
and can only live on a beach.
次お願いします。これも同じような鳥ですね。種類は違います。
This is also another kind of waterfront bird.
次お願いします。このような鳥たちが暮らしていた砂浜は堤防の建設によってこのように完全に破壊されてしまいました。
And their beach area where they used to live was completely destroyed by the construction for the levee.
はい、じゃあ次お願いします。津波の工事の影響を今までご紹介してきましたけれども、工事による問題だけではなくて原発事故による影響もあります。
So I've been talking about the construction along the waterfront, but there's also impact from the nuclear power accident.
それは放射能による影響ではありません。
And that's not a radiation issue.
次お願いします。それはですね、フォレストデコンタミネーション、森林除染と呼ばれるものです。
And a main problem is the forest decontamination that's been going on.
この写真は環境省によって撮影された作業員たちが森の土の表面の3センチをこう剥がしていっている様子です。
This is the environmental agency which is taking off 3 centimeters of topsoil from the forest area.
その部分にたくさんの放射性物質が含まれているんですね。
And there are many radioactive substances in that initial topsoil area.
Next, please. これ森林除染が終わるとこのように森がツルツルになってしまってまるで公園のようです。
So when they finish decontaminating, then the soil area just becomes very bare.
これだけやってもあまり放射線量は下がりません。
Even if you do all this decontamination, it doesn't change much in terms of the radioactive substances.
次お願いします。しかしですね、このようにその土の中にはたくさんの土壌性の生き物たち、ソイルオーガニズムスとか言いますけれども、そういうものが暮らしています。
But within that soil, 3 centimeters, there lived many types of insects.
そうですね。で、完全にその森林除染によって土の表面を除去してしまったことによって、彼らはこの地域で非常に減少しています。
So the numbers of these types of insects have decreased greatly because of this forest decontamination.
左側が羽隠しロービーと真ん中がゾームシウェービル、一番右がダニですけれども、全て私たちの研究でいずれも個体数が 60% 以上減少していることが確認されています。
So these are rogue beetles, weevils, and ticks. But we can see that from our research that 60% have decreased. It has decreased in number by 60%.
次お願いします。最後に先ほど示した写真に戻りますが、このようにきれいな環境の裏には放射線による直接的な影響がなくても生態系全体には本当に大きな影響が及んでいることをご理解いただけたら嬉しいです。
So I return to the major area that has been built up and decontaminated with solar panels, etc. But even if this area was not affected directly by radioactivity, you can see that it has a huge impact on the ecology of the area.
Thank you for listening. ご清聴ありがとうございます。
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Yu-san and Takeharu-san. So we would like to move on to the Q&A session. And because we are recording, we would like you guys to come up and ask a question. If you do not want the recording to be included, after your question, we could remove it, but let me know beforehand. Okay, so who would like to start? I know that we had several questions through email already. So who will be the brave one to be the first one to ask questions? Well, while waiting, Andrew, would you like to start?
I have plenty of time.
Okay. Well, Marissa, I know that you have several questions. Why don't you start?
Have you written up here?
Yes, please.
Oh, sorry, I have prepared myself here. I can read from my email.
Yes, sure.
So when I first read Tokyo Ueno Station a few years ago, I found that the strong imagery was very engaging. Like, for example, the use of bold text to represent the background dialogue or text on signage was quite unique to me. And as I continued to read Japanese novels, I didn't really encounter such similar styles. So I was kind of curious as to what inspired that style of writing.
日本語で上野駅公園口を読んだ時に、
はい、
いろいろ、書体、
はい、
とかそういうものを変えて、すごく、強い、画像的な影響があるということを感じました。で、そういうような書き方はどこからインスピレーションをいただいてもらったんでしょうか。
太字にしているというのはこういう。
This is what you mean, right?
Yes.
That, where I have a
濃い、
right,
書体を変えて、濃い、太字にしてあるところは、実際の看板を、引用している箇所が多いんですけれども、それはそのインスピレーションというのは、JR 上野駅公園口にはそういう実際の看板や、主に看板ですね、看板、以外に音ですね、電車の音や、意味のない公園のたまたま隣の席に座った人の会話が挿入されています。
So the main points where I've written in bold in the book are actual signposts that I've just cited, basically, and then also the sounds of trains or conversations that you can just overhear, just happen to overhear, that happen to come into your consciousness as they talk right near you.
実はこのJR 上野駅公園口というのは、山手線東京の環状線の、連作の5作目なんですね。で全部で7作を構想していて、今書いている途中なんですけれども、もう少しで完結する。で皆主人公が自殺をしようとしてるんです。でそれは全ての作品に共通するんですけども、その看板、実際の看板がそのまま入って引用されている。で、街中を歩いている音が侵入してくるというのが、なぜか どこからインスピレーションを得たのかというと、自殺をしようとしている人というのは、自分という主体というか枠組みが壊れてしまっている、あるいは穴が開いている、ひびが入っているという状態だと思うんです。その時に通常すごく健康な時というのは、音や目に入るもの、耳に入るものを取捨選択しているのだけれども、その主体が壊れてしまう、ひびが入ってしまうと、そこから音や目に入るものというのが侵入してくるのではないかということを表現しています。
ありがとうございました。
はい。
Actually, this book, the JR, well, actually in English it's called Tokyo Ueno Station, is the fifth of 7 so far stories that are related to the Yamanote Loop line in Tokyo. And all of them, I have the main character that is thinking of committing suicide or is going to commit suicide. That's my theme. And in my mind, a person who is thinking of committing suicide, the self has really disintegrated. It either has holes in it or has cracks. And so all these signs and signposts and sounds just come into that person without any kind of barrier. And a healthy person would, basically hear these sounds or see these signposts, and they would just filter it out. They would ignore what they didn't need or weren't interested in. But when a person's self has disintegrated, then I think this kind of thing can become very intrusive to them.
何かもし納得できなかったり、さらに疑問が湧いてきたら質問してください。
If you're not satisfied with my answer, and if you have more questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
And then I guess I have a shorter question. It's a little more personal, but I was curious as to if you have a favorite author or playwright.
特にお好きな作家、もしくは劇作家がおられたら。
いろいろいるんですが、繰り返し読んでいるのは、劇作家はベケットですかね。ベケット、あとエドワード・オールビー、サム・シェパードも好きです。小説家は本当にいろいろ読んでいるけれども、一冊を挙げるというのが難しいですね。ドストエフスキーの、小説は繰り返し読んでいます。若い頃に、好きな言葉を、ノートに筆記するという癖があったんです。なかなか家庭が貧しかったので本を思うように買えない。で図書館に行って、借りてきて好きなフレーズを写そうとしたら「罪と罰」は大半を筆記したほぼ一冊筆記してしまった、という記憶が残ってます。はい、延長で借りて、はい。
So I have many authors and playwrights that I read, but I would say the ones that I read over and over again are Samuel Beckett, Edward Albee, Sam Shepard. I like those playwrights. And in terms of novelists, I read so many different authors, it's hard to give one. But I do like Dostoevsky. When I was young, I had the habit of writing down words that I liked from certain books that I read. And my family was very poor, so I couldn't buy books, but I would go to the library and take the books out. And for Crime and Punishment, I kept renewing and taking the book out over and over and over again. And I think I must have written almost the whole book down in the words that I liked in my notebook.
Thank you. I think that's all.
Okay, who'd like to go next? Will?
So, hi, Miss Yu. Thank you for being here. My name is Will. I had 2 questions. The first question is, I noticed that in Tokyo Ueno Station, the weather is very present, like if it's a character in the novel. I'm wondering, was there an intention behind this, and does the weather symbolize emotions or feelings?
2つ質問がありますけど、最初のはこの、JR、上野公園口、は非常に天候が天候の、描写が結構あるんですけれど、それは意図的だったんですか？それとその天気は感情につながるものなんですか？この作品の中で。
そうですね。でも個人的に忙しくて全てうまくいってる時というのはあまり天候は私の場合気にしないんですけれども、ものすごく悲しいことがあった時に空を見上げて、空が青いなというその青さが、押し寄せてくるというようなことが私自身は多いです。
So when for myself, when I'm busy and things are going well, I don't really think about the weather that much. But when something upsets me, I'm sad, I often look up at the sky. And if the sky is blue, then I feel like it is really pressing down on me. The blueness of the sky is pressing down on me.
あともう自分が死んでいくのだというふうに思うと、そういう、天候というか普段は立ち止まらないものの前で立ち止まったりということはあるのではないかなというふうに思っています。
And I think also when you know you're going to die, when you plan to die, when you know you're going to die, then something like the weather, which normally you might not take into account much, I think you will notice a lot more.
23年前に私は伴侶をがんで、亡くしました。
23 years ago, my partner died from cancer.
でもう末期になって入院するときに荷物をまとめて、自宅から病院に向かうときに、彼がすごく晴れた日で、夕日の前で立ち止まって、もう夕日が見れなくなる、二度と見れなくなるかもしれない、綺麗だな、こんな綺麗な夕日は見たことなんかないっていうふうに言ったんですけども、通常だったらこう通り過ぎてしまうものが拡大されるというか、で見えることというのはあるのではないかなと思います。
So when he was terminal, and we were going to the hospital with certain items packed, he stopped and watched the sunset. And normally he didn't really do something like that, but he said that he may not be able to see the sun any more sunsets like this, and that it was such a beautiful sunset. And so I think that when people are really at a crucial stage, they notice things like sunset or the weather, and it becomes a kind of an enlarged moment for them.
あと雨が多いというふうに、JR 上野駅公園口も雨のシーンがあるし、8月の果ても重要なシーンで雨が降っているというのは、雨は天と地をつなぐものなので、ある、運命というか、天の視点というのを表すときに雨を用いているのかもしれません。
So in terms of the rain scenes, we have some in the Tokyo Ueno Station, and also in end of August, a crucial scene is a rain scene. So I think that rain connects heaven and earth. So I may be using the rain that way.
で、そのかもしれませんというふうに使ったのは、私は実はこういうふうに本になってからは自分の作品を読み返したことがないのです。
Okay. The reason I say I may have done that is that after my books are published, I never read them again. I never read the book once it's done.
それは朗読会で部分的に読むのを例外としてです。
The exception is that I will read certain sections at a book reading, if I'm asked to do so.
なぜならばもう本になったらそれは私は読者のものだと思っているのです。
That's because once it becomes really available as a book, I think it belongs to the reader.
どのように読もうと自由というか、誤読というものはないと思っています。で、著者があまり余計な実はこう書いたんだとか、そういうものは間違いだって言うべきではないと思っていて、ですからかもしれないというふうにお答えしました。
So I think it's up to the reader's interpretation of what they are able to get out of the book. I don't think it's a place of the author to say, "Oh, that's not what I meant in the book," or "You're wrong about a certain interpretation." So that's why I say I may have used it that way.
質問2つでしたよね。
And you had a second question?
I would say thank you for sharing those stories with me. It really brings a lot more depth to the novel. My second question was, where do you find inspiration for what you write? Because I feel, especially in Tokyo Ueno Station, it's very figurative and powerful and beautiful, especially the scenes of grief and death.
ありがとうございます。もっと深い読み方ができるかと思います。
はい、
で、2つ目の質問は、
はい、
どこで、
はい、
本を書かれる時のインスピレーションを得られるんでしょうか。特にこの、上の公園口は、非常に悲痛とか、悲しさ、そういうものが、凝縮されているような、本なので。そういうインスピレーションはどういうところからでしょうか。
私はですね、プロットを立てて、小説を書いたことが今まで一度もないんですね。
I've never set up a plot when I write my fiction.
それで、先ほどの話ともつながるんですけれども、 こう取材というようなこともほぼしたことがないですね。
And I also don't really do much research for books.
出来事が起きて、自分がその出来事の前に立っている時、気がつかないうちに立っている、あるいは出来事が私の前に立っている時に、小説を書き始めるのではないかなと思います。
So I think what I start writing books, fiction, when something happens and I'm standing in front of that, watching it, or and I'm doing that. I'm standing and looking at what's happening without even realizing that I've stopped to really focus on it. Or just when something happens that's right in front of me. That's what starts me to write.
今となってはその最初のきっかけというのは思い出せないんですけれども、でも本当にいろいろですね。今書いている小説、ダイヤモンドピジョンという小説は、ある人から、昔鳩の密輸を鳩をベルギーから購入していた。でその時に鳩にダイヤモンドを飲ませてダイヤモンドの密輸をしていた。ベルギーから日本ですね。で日本に鳩を購入するって言ってベルギーで購入して日本に着いたら、鳩の首をダイヤモンドだと砂袋が鳩の砂袋があるのでそこで止まるんですね。で鳩の首を切ってダイヤモンドを取り出していてそれを原始にパチンコ屋を開いたという人を昔の話ですねという話を聞いたんです。でそれで、その私の中で、その鳩の血で汚れたダイヤモンドのイメージが取り付いてでダイヤモンドピジョンという作品を今書いている長編小説を書いているんですけどもそういうある時聞いた話やある時私の元へ届いた手紙であるとかそういうなんか散歩中に目に入ったものとかそういうほぼ偶然の出来事で物語が立ち上がるという感じです。
So I think my inspirations come from various sources. Right now I'm writing a novel called Diamond Pigeon. And I heard from somebody that they smuggle in pigeons from Belgium that have swallowed or that have eaten a diamond. They force the pigeon to eat a diamond, and then when the pigeon gets to Japan, then they slit the throat of the pigeon to get the diamond out, and that's the way they smuggle the diamonds. And that somebody had built a pachinko parlor from the money he gained from this smuggling in the diamond. And so in my mind, I had this image of a diamond that was stained with the pigeon's blood. So that's the start of the story, Diamond Pigeon, that I'm writing. So it's stories that I hear or letters that I receive or what I see on my walks. Those are the kinds of various coincidental, accidental happenings that I see as the start of my stories.
Thank you so much. I'm going to be visiting Japan for the first time in January, so I'll be on the lookout for the areas you described.
Okay, thank you very much. I know that you have many more questions, but we are running out of time. You-san and Takeharu-san will be staying with us for the next a little bit more. So if you have more questions, please come and talk to them. And I would like to thank Ms. Miri and Mr. Yanagi Takeharu to give us very thoughtful talks. And I've learned so much for sure, and I hope you also did. So please thank them again.
ありがとうございました。本当は質問をもっとたくさんいただいているので、お一人お一人に答えたいし、多分その質問者の方、私の答えを聞いて、新しい質問が湧いてくる、生まれることもあると思うので、またいつかなんか時間を決めないで長くお話ししたいなとは思います。
じゃあ次回は丸1日ということで。
そうですね。何かその時間を決めないで次々質問、言葉が生まれていくというその現場に立ち会いたいなという気持ちはあります。今日は皆さんとも最初の出会いというか接点を与えていただいたことを、感謝いたします。どうもありがとうございました。
So I would like to speak longer with you, and I know that when people have questions and hear my answer, then there may be a follow-up question and more exchanges that we could have. So perhaps at some other time when we don't have a set time frame, we could perhaps talk more. And I think that's the kind of talk, chat, conversation from which words are born. And I'd like to follow up on that. And I'm glad that we had this first encounter today. Thank you very much.